Good evening and welcome to the first ever episode of the State of Scottish Football here on the fantastic A State of Mind network. We're live on YouTube, Twitter and Facebook, primed and ready to dive headfirst into the weird and wonderful world of Scottish football. My name is Sean McGill and joining me on our debut show is the man with the best beard in the postcode area, Cameron Wansdell. And Cameron, I've got a very important opening question for you.
Okay.
Do you love Scottish football?
I do love Scottish football. Who doesn't love Scottish football? If you don't love Scottish football, I don't want you near this show. Simple as that. Do you love Scottish football, Sean?
I do love Scottish football. You love Scottish football. I love Scottish football. And we know there's thousands of people out there who love Scottish football. And that's exactly why we're here. Every weeknight, Monday to Friday, 6 p.m. to 7 p.m, our rotating cast of talented, enthusiastic, and passionate contributors will be live discussing all the major stories, matches, and of course, the never-ending drama that makes the beautiful game in Scotland the glorious spectacle that it is. And most importantly, we want you to be involved. Our comments section is open and waiting for you to share your thoughts and opinions with us. So as you join in, what we hope is a engaged and enjoyable live football debate. And to make sure you never miss out on those debates, we'd very much appreciate if you could subscribe to the channel on YouTube. All subscribers are entered into a free monthly prize draw with the opportunity to win some brilliant items, including signed and or framed pieces of memorabilia. So do it and your life will improve dramatically, I'm sure. Speaking of those football debates, let's get into one of those right away, Cameron. And it's a story that's been rumbling on for a few days now, and that is that former Dundee United starlet Ryan Gauld is now on the brink of joining MLS side Vancouver Whitecaps on what is reported to be a very lucrative deal. It's meant to be worth around $1.5 million a year, making the Scot the highest paid player on the Canadian side's roster. I do promise that on the show we'll go beyond your sort of boring surface level questions, but first of all, Cameron, I want to ask what your immediate reaction to this move was, because on social media it seems to have stoked quite a fierce debate, quite a difference of opinion. So what did you think when you heard about
this? Quite honestly, I wasn't too shocked. I know there was a lot of talk of him coming back to Scotland, a bit of a talk of him going to the Premier League. I think Southampton were the most rumoured team, but I kind of fancied him to go to the MLS anyway. We're going to get into the MLS itself in a little while, but I'm more shocked as Vancouver Whitecaps. They are not a good team in the MLS. I think they've won 2 out of 15 MLS games this season. They're not having a great year whatsoever. Plenty of better teams that he probably would fit into. Seems like they're maybe in a rebuild phase or something. I'm not quite sure, but yeah, I'm a little bit shocked it's Vancouver, but I'm not shocked that he's went to America or Canada.
And I mean, is there a sense of this move being an underwhelming one for Gauld? Because considering he's coming off the back of such a successful season in one of Europe's top leagues in Portugal, I mean, there was no player in that division who won more Man of the Match awards than Ryan Gauld. He was absolutely vital to that Firenze side that struggled all season long, and ultimately they were relegated. But I mean, Ryan Gauld did his absolute best to prevent that. He was involved in 52% of their goals, which is remarkable, really. From the I mean, you still kind of see him as a youngster, but he's been around for 10 years now. He's 25 years old.
He's 25. I didn't know that. All this talk about him going to the Euros, and I still thought he was only about 22, 23. I can't believe he broke onto the scene about 2012, 2013 it was. That really shocked me. He's 26 by the end of this year. So he's not quite a youngster anymore. I think people expect him to make a move and gradually break through squads. That time's over. If he's going to a club, he needs to be playing football. I think that's why he hasn't moved to a bigger Portuguese side or back into like the English Premier League.
We might have spoken this previously, but what are your sort of memories of Ryan Gauld breaking onto the scene? Because I remember it as a very exciting time as a youngster, like you said, probably about 12, 13 years old at the time. And the fact that a Scottish player was being called the mini Messi, as our headline says, they're a player who could go to Barcelona, Real Madrid, Manchester United, the very elite of world football. And it was a young boy from the same country as me, only a few years older than me, was such an exciting time period.
Yeah, definitely. Especially, I think if you're a Dundee United fan as well, they had a lot. They had quite a few youngsters back then as well breaking through with him. You could say he's underwhelmed. I think that maybe be harsh, but yeah, to be called the mini Messi, it's always going to be it's a big weight on your shoulders. It's difficult to ever live up to that. In fact, nobody ever will. I don't think. So I'm not shocked that he's not quite reached those heights, but it was exciting when he was coming through. He definitely could see the ability that he had. I think we're seeing that just now with Dundee United. They've got quite a few youngsters that maybe aren't getting the same kind of hype treatment, even though they deserve to be. They've got a bunch of players. That's why they've promoted their academy manager to their first team manager. Really exciting time back then. It could be another exciting time for United fans in the next year or two.
Yeah, I remember seeing Ryan Gauld playing live for the first time at Rugby Park against Kilmarnock, and Ryan Gauld was outstanding that day. They won the 4-1, and like you said, it was a great team. Nadir Shifshay, Stuart Armstrong, Gary Mackay-Stephen, Andy Robertson, John Souttar, so many talented players in that team. And they just wiped the floor with us. And they should have won the Scottish Cup that season. They were favourites to do so. And it was that Tommy Wright St Johnston's side who upended them in the final. But like we said, I just found it a massively exciting time period that a player could go on. And it's not that he's underwhelmed. It's obviously tough to make it at any level of football. But considering that his stock is so high at the moment, do you think that move to Vancouver, to the MLS, is a little bit disappointing for him?
Yeah, I think that's fair. It's like you say, his stock is so high. There's been so much talk about him before the Euros and still going on after. Like I've already mentioned, there was teams in the Premier League apparently looking at him. That was reported by multiple outlets. So for him to go so far away as well, if he'd gone to another European country, even a lesser European country, one on Scotland's level almost, you could understand that. But because he's so far away in Canada playing in the American League, they play in the middle of the night. We don't really get to see him. Do we hear of Johnny Russell anymore? Do we really hear about Lewis Morgan anymore? Also in a struggling team over there with Inter Miami. It's underwhelming because we won't be able to keep tabs on him and we don't really know how well he's doing. We can only hope that he really excels and then gets a move back to Europe if that's what he wants in the next year or so. Because I don't know if Steve Clarke will be that interested in when he's in America.
Does that excuse still hold up in today's sort of like when technology's at the forefront? Like Steve Clarke can watch any game he wants at any time. He doesn't have to. I mean, I'm sure the pandemic has sort of amplified this, that you want to be at games watching players live. But he managed to watch Jack Hendry despite never going to Belgium. And I get what you say about time zones, but Steve Clarke will have these games on demand, and I'm sure he is watching as much as he possibly can. But is it the level of football where we're saying that Ryan Gauld moving over there to the MLS, it's not the standard that we need for the Scottish national team? Or is it just more of a case of out of sight, out of mind? He's across the Atlantic Ocean and he's just not going to feature for Scotland anymore?
To be fair, I was meaning more, my first statement there, I meant more like us as fans wouldn't be able to watch him. We're not going to spend our time watching highlights of the MLS, sadly. A lot of us wouldn't anyway. Steve Clarke, I suppose it's his own decision. I'm more going off the fact he's not turned his nose up, but he hasn't really selected MLS players recently. So it's unlikely that he will again. But I do think I'm a big fan of the MLS. I think it's a good league. I know there's that hint of retirement home. Some of their best players are Carlos Vela, Nani, Javier Hernandez, older players way past 30. But I think you do have outstanding talents there. You've got Josef Martinez at Atalanta. Shocked he's not made the move over yet. His teammate Miguel Almiron already moved to Newcastle in the Premier League. And I think his struggles have stemmed from Newcastle United not being the best football team, not actually from Almiron himself, because the fans love him. They know what he can do. But no, it's a great league with great talents. But more for me with this, it's because Vancouver do not seem to be a very good team. They just don't. They don't seem to be a good outfit whatsoever. They've got a very inexperienced manager. And I don't think Gauld will be able to truly showcase his skills. It'll be a little bit like Ferenc, where he'll probably be the key player. He'll probably be dragging them to some victories, but if he's not going to be seen in a good team, what can you really take from that? And that's where it probably hurts him at an international level.
And does it depend on sort of motivations as well? Do we as football fans have the right to criticise Ryan Gauld for his life choices? I mean, perhaps it doesn't feel like he should be sat by the phone waiting for Steve Clarke to phone him. I mean, just like we said, he just had an outstanding season and he still didn't make the Euros squad. So he could go to a Premier League club, maybe even a Championship club, and perhaps not feature, perhaps not make as much money, perhaps not experience a new culture. Or he could make this move, a young man aged 25, like we said, go and experience a fantastic city in a new country, a new way of living, while setting himself up financially in the long term. Do we have a right to say that's the wrong move for Ryan Gauld?
No, definitely not. I think we like to think that football, an entire career should be based around getting into the international team, winning all the trophies you can. But at the end of the day, it is a job. It's a glorified job. It's an entertainment business job, but it is a job. He needs to make money. He'll be making a lot of it at Vancouver. I think he's going to be a designated player, which basically means you get paid way more than everyone else on your team. I think he's definitely someone that wants to move to different cities. He moved to Portugal at a very young age, so he's not afraid to move about. No, there's no way we should be saying what he should and shouldn't do. If he wants to go over there, likely make some money, you never know in football, like, not to be too crass here, but you could go into a training session one day at your new club, have an injury, never play again, no more income, no more money. You need to make money while you can. I don't think we should really hound Ryan Gauld for doing that.
And it's not like it's a complete pub league. I mean, it's not like he's going to the middle of nowhere, is it? I mean, are we right to sort of? I mean, a lot of the comments I've seen over the past couple of weeks have been quite sneering towards MLS, and I mean, I'm a massive advocate of Scottish football. That's why we're doing this show. We intend on not just sort of. I mean, we will take the mick out of it when it deserves to have the mick taken out of it because Scottish football is an amazing place. But I also think the quality of football has improved dramatically over the past few years, and I think that the product as a whole is very, very good and should be talked up more. But I mean, is there a massive gap between Scottish football and the MLS? I mean, like we said, there's far more money in the American game with some of those players you mentioned. I mean, Gonzalo Higuain and Blaise Matuidi just at Inter Miami themselves kind of like, I'm sure their wages supersede most of Scottish football.
Yeah.
So do Scottish football fans have a right? Should we be looking at MLS and going, that's no good for Gauld, when we have plenty of players and gladly Premiership players who went to the Euros?
No, definitely not. Like, we've seen Aberdeen's new striker came from the MLS. It's fair enough, the MLS teams do have a lot of marquee signings, older players and a lot more money. But the league itself, the teams itself, are still good footballers at those teams. The worst teams in the league have some outstanding footballers that are too good for the Scottish Premiership. It's maybe a bigger disparity between the best and the worst players in each team, but it's still a good league with good squads, good managers, a good entertainment, to be fair. We definitely look down on it because of certain things, like, I don't know, they call it soccer, the fans and the commentary is quite funny, so we kind of sneer at it and giggle at it that way. But from wherever it was 10 years ago, it's a totally different league, and it will be again in maybe sooner in 10 years, maybe in 5 years' time. It could be up there with an elite league. We'll just have to wait and see how it turns out.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the national setup as well, I mean, the United States men's team look like they could sort of get on the women's level in terms of being sort of an international powerhouse. I mean, some of the young players coming through that American side are really, really exciting and now at top European clubs. And they obviously have a home World Cup along with Mexico and Canada in 2026. And I think they'll be aiming to do sort of real damage in that tournament and really sort of state their claim as one of the top footballing nations. We'll still call it football when we're talking about it. But to get back to that sort of like sneering conversation, I mean, it annoyed me last week. There's a link to America because it was American Chris Mueller who has left Orlando to join Hibs on a pre-contract. He'll be joining them in a few months. But the talk was, he was originally linked to Belgium. I think it was Ostend, Jack Hendry's side. And some of the comments coming in were, why is he going to the Scottish Premiership? Belgium would have been a much better move for his sort of long-term career prospects. And like that Scottish football would be a step down from. I mean, I don't know if folk watched the Europa League last season, but Rangers beat Standard Liège home and away and then put 9 goals past Royal Antwerp in the knockout stages. And so that was some of the best sides Belgium had offered. Yes, Rangers were fantastic last season, but I don't think there's a massive disparity between Scotland and Belgium in terms of those leagues. And I think that, I mean, it makes sense for a career perspective to move to Scotland, does it not, considering that with Brexit, it's harder to get these international moves. I know he's a US citizen and that perhaps doesn't apply, but just relations between clubs are sort of more frayed. Just nip up the road to Scotland. And I mean, countless players have done it, made the move from the Scottish Premiership to England. So why would Chris Mueller or any other player be any different?
Yeah, no, that's a really weird claim. Belgian league is strong. I will give them that. I know Anderlecht have fallen away in recent years, but it is still a strong league. But the Scottish league also is. If we have to go into the whole coefficients talk, I'm sure we're up there with Belgium. There is plenty of leagues in Europe. I think Scotland must be one of the most competitive. I know that the top two run away with it, obviously now, especially when the Rangers are back. But your teams like Hibs, Hearts, and Aberdeen could be massive steps up to a bigger move, like you say, more than less to England. Plenty of players have made the change. Plenty of players have went and excelled in the Premier League, not just the Championship or League One down south. They've went to the Premier League and really flourished. So yeah, it's a very weird argument to say that the Belgian league would be a much, much better step up. If anything, I'd say Scotland's the better league.
Of course you would. I like that. And sort of pivoting back to Ryan Gauld, do you think we're capable of sort of having, it's hard in Scottish football, but to have that nuanced view and understand both sides of it, that you can simultaneously understand Ryan Gould's lifestyle choices and financial choices and the fact they would like to make that move to Vancouver for those reasons, but at the same time feel disappointed that a talented, still fairly young Scottish player who's just had a great season in Portugal hasn't made a move that could get you a little bit more excited, that you feel would really sort of make sense in his sort of career development? Because I guess if you want that sort of upward trajectory throughout your career and maybe tailing off towards the end, it seems like he's kind of taken a step back perhaps.
Yeah, it is disappointing, but at the same time, you've got to accept that what's done is done. When it's confirmed, there's nothing that can change it. It's not a perfect world. If Ryan Gauld could go to a team like, I don't know, Celtic or Rangers, make just as much money as he will at Vancouver while experiencing the same lifestyle, he would have done it. But that's just not the world we live in. He's made his choice, and we're just going to have to accept it. Simple as that.
I imagine that the sort of cauldron of noise around Vancouver Whitecaps isn't quite the same as Celtic and Rangers as well. I mean,
No.
I'm not sure what type of character Ryan Gauld is. I have no reason to comment on that. It might very well thrive in that, but I imagine that in Canada, you might just be able to enjoy an easier life. And I mean, who's to say that Celtic or Rangers were interested in the first place? So there was murmurs of that, but I think that's always going to happen when there's a Scottish player excelling. Do you think, is there any chance that strong performances in the MLS can be the bridge between Ryan Gauld and the national team? It might have not worked out at Firenze, but I guess you could argue that that's the first time Ryan Gauld has had a sort of sustained run of strong performances, very strong performances, since he left Dundee United. I mean, it didn't work for him at Sporting Lisbon, and the loan spells from there, including the one at Hibs, that was quite disappointing for a lot of people, I think. So to say, yeah, Firenze was a very, very good run, but it was just the one season. If he continues to have strong performances in Vancouver for, say, another 2 seasons, he'll still be 27, and I'm sure Scotland will still need attacking options because they don't seem to be sort of falling out the sky anytime soon. Do you think that could sort of be the pathway for Ryan Gauld into Steve Clarke's setup?
Yeah, definitely. I think you made a good point there as well. I was someone that, when we were talking about your squad, I would have quite happily seen Ryan Gauld there, but he wouldn't have been on my list to go because of that reason. He's never had a sustained period of good form. He's always been on loans. He's always struggled to get into those teams. Like you said, at Hibs, he was a big disappointment. I think injuries may have played a part. But was Steve Clarke wrong to not call someone up after one good season on the back of a good season in the second division? He could easily go to Vancouver, and we hope it doesn't happen, but he could not do great over there either. Players have went to the MLS and failed. It does happen, just like players coming to Scotland. We'll have to wait and see. It'd be nice to see that bridge, because we've seen a few players now. Johnny Russell got called up when he was at Kansas City, but any others? I think Lewis Morgan's been called up at Inter Miami. Maybe he did once or twice. Danny Wilson, as soon as he went to Colorado, no chance of him getting back in the squad. Quite a few have went over and never had a sniff, but if Ryan Gauld can really perform, like you say, we're not blessed with attacking options, definitely not blessed with players like Ryan Gauld. If he could get a call up, it would definitely open more opportunities for players to go across there knowing that their place in the national team could be safe.
And I was the same as you, that I wouldn't have had Ryan Gauld in my squad just because I didn't know who you would have left out. Like, I mean, if you can have an endless supply of players, that's great. But there wasn't really a player who I saw in that list of 26 who I thought, yeah, he'd be the one I swap for Ryan Gauld. I mean, we had the conversation at the time that a lot of people said, how did John Fleck, who had a pretty sort of turgid season at Sheffield United as they got relegated from the Premier League, how could he make it in when Ryan Gauld, who's had a great season at Firenze, couldn't? But the argument there is they're completely different players. I mean, what's the point in arguing that when one is a attacking midfielder, if not sort of like he would have been one of the two in that in the sort of Steve Clark system, or John Fleck, who's a six who sits deep. Obviously, John Fleck didn't make an appearance, but it's hard to equate those two. I don't really understand why people did so. You mentioned some of the players who are in America, like Johnny Russell, Lewis Morgan, Danny Wilson, Stuart Findlay, of course, made the move towards the end of last season. With the addition of Gauld, do you see him as the most likely out of that group? If one is going to get a call up from the MLS, it would be him, or do you think there's anybody else in that pack who could just worm their way into Steve Clark's thinking?
I think Stuart Findlay possibly could. You know a lot more about him than me, but I've always rated Stuart Findlay. I think he's a good centre-back. He's probably doing okay over there. I've not heard anything bad about him over there. I think the fact that we have so many centre-backs as well, and Steve Clark likes different options at centre-back. Obviously, Declan Gallagher, he didn't play, but he also likes a sort of tall, commanding presence as well. Stuart Findlay maybe. I'd maybe even have him ahead of Gauld. Definitely right now, anyway. We'd have to see how well Gauld does over there, but I'd have those two together. I don't know about Lewis Morgan. Danny Wilson's not had a sniff since he's went over, and maybe even before he went over. And I think maybe the time's passed for Johnny Russell. But yeah, you know more about Stuart Findlay than me. Would you say one of those two, him or Gauld?
Yeah, I'd probably say Gauld has more chance because, like we said, attacking options are pretty sparse at the moment. And also, Stuart Findlay hasn't really managed to get a run in the Philadelphia Union team since he got over there. Obviously, I've been keeping an eye, as I'm very fond of Stuart Findlay. He gave me some great memories as a Kelly fan. And I think that he hasn't, I think he's made one start so far, maybe a couple. Really? So he would need to obviously have a better run in the team. But the conversation was the same when Stuart Findlay did that. I mean, he has been capped for Scotland. He scored in his only appearance for Scotland against San Marino at Hampden. And all the talk was Stuart Findlay could have gone to perhaps a Hearts or a Hibs, maybe even a Championship League One side, and got himself into the Scotland setup. But if he wants to go to Philadelphia and make that money and experience that life, then I think that's fair enough. It's a new challenge for him, isn't it? The thing that I also think holds Stuart Findlay back is he's left-footed, and of course you'd expect Kieran Tierney to continue to hold on to that left centre-back spot, and he would be behind Grant Hanley and Declan Gallagher and maybe even Jack Hendry in that sort of central role as well. If he was right-footed, then I think we maybe have that conversation, because the whole reason that Scott McTominay was moved back to that role was that we had a ball player there in that right centre back, and if Stuart Findlay's left foot was his right foot, then it'd be great because his passing's great. But if my grandmother had wheels, she would have been a bike. So well all said. That sort of stuff. Well said. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So it's hard. So I would say Ryan Gauld is probably the front runner to get a call up from there, and I would like to see it as well. I mean, but the thing is, with the lack of sort of friendlies these days in international football, I like the Nations League. I like that it gives that sort of impetus, and everything means something in international football, but it also means that you aren't quite afforded the same opportunities to perhaps do experiments like this. So I think Ryan Gauld might have to really, really perform for a sustained period of time to get himself into the international setup. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, definitely, especially on the friendlies front as well. But yeah, I think he would really need to do outstanding at Vancouver. And like I said, which is a poor team, so it's going to be very difficult for him to do so. He'd have to take some excellent form, a lot of goals, a lot of assists to make Steve Clark take notice and bring him into the squad. Well,
let's stop talking about America and Canada. It's too far away, isn't it? That's the point, isn't it? So let's get talking about stuff on home soil. And the group stages of the Premier Sports Cup came to a conclusion yesterday, with 11 teams progressing from the first round, joined by Scotland's 5 European representatives. That's great to see, isn't it? 5 European representatives. They're all in the hat for yesterday's draw. Our plan is to talk through the ties and discuss the teams who made it through. And I'm keen to start with Hearts, Cameron. You might not be. But I think it's one of the more interesting ones. Not only I think that fixture always stands out when Celtic and Hearts meet, but I think it's more interesting because, I mean, the reason that Hearts will play Ange Postecoglou Celtic is that they missed out on a seeded spot by 1 goal. And it was St Mirren who qualified ahead of them, and St Mirren were awarded a 3-0 win after Dumbarton couldn't fulfil the fixture due to a COVID-19 outbreak. Robbie Nielsen wasn't best pleased. He said Hearts would have been better just forfeiting that game yesterday. If they had a COVID-19 outbreak prior to the game, Hearts would have been a seeded team and would have got an easier draw heading into the last 16. So he wasn't very happy. Does he have a point?
Well, to be fair, Robbie Nielsen is not usually happy at any point. I think he would have been angry if we did get a seeded spot. No, he does have a point, but it's one of those things. What are you going to do? Forfeited games have to be 3-0. You can't play a team that's absolutely ransacked.
Where's that from? I was thinking about this because my team also were handed a 3-0 defeat. Why 3-0? How is it? Just because it's always been 3-0 and it will just always continue to be 3-0?
I would love for someone to look it up.
If there's any historians watching who could let us know the origins of why we decided it was going to be a 3-0 win for unfulfilled fixtures or forfeits, because it's quite harsh.
Definitely, I think it's definitely to more hurt the team that's forfeited, because most results would be 1-0 or 2-0, you'd think, and that would have been favourite and Hearts would have qualified. But it's almost as if the 3-0 is to punish the other team and give them a bad goal difference rather than help the team that's not having to play, wouldn't you think?
Well, yeah. Well, Killie were having to win 4-1 on Saturday to qualify, but they didn't need it. Morton beat Clyde anyway, but that was for an administrative error, which was pretty embarrassing from a club of Kilmarnock's size. It happens to Killie and Hearts. It happens to our teams.
Those two teams.
The moral of the story there. I interrupted you there, but Robbie Nielsen, he likes to sort of come out in the press and talk about external factors sometimes and things that can affect his players on the pitch. And to be fair, Mark Ridgers had a fantastic game in the Cali goal. Is rightfully receiving a lot of praise. But if he wanted his team to be seeded, they could have scored another goal yesterday. Yeah,
definitely. He knew they had to go out and get 2 goals. So it was worrying as well that it took so long to even score. It could have easily been 0-0 if Ridgers had kept it up. Walker scored, I think it was the 75th minute, quite late on. He knew we had to go out and get goals. He could have been more attacking. Sometimes it's just not your day, though. I don't think any of the players during the group stage have let themselves down, so we can't really moan. It's just really unfortunate we're not seeded and we're coming up against Celtic. It's going to happen anyway. Hearts seem to play Celtic every single season in both cup competitions. It's bound to happen. Why not get out of the way straight away? Well, they still look a little bit shaky. They're still getting new players in. They still might have Barkas in goals. Now's probably the best time to play them, in all honesty. It's just more of a shame that it's at Parkhead. I think we'd have more of a chance at Tynecastle, but we'll see what happens. It's a really interesting tie. Definitely the pick of the round. And just more interesting that it happened because of that weird seeding incident.
What would make you highlight Barkas? I'm just curious to what is it? Has he done anything this weekend that would make you particularly bring him up?
Even if we don't include friendlies, he still managed to have a howler last week in the last 7 days. So, yeah, he's had 2 bad games in a row. And honestly, if they play him against us, I'll be very pleased. There'll be a smile on my face. They could put on 10 new signings, world-class players, but if he's in goals, I'll be thinking, take a shot from anywhere. It's like when you're playing a keeper at youth level that's about 5'1", and you think just shoot for far out, it'll go over him. That's what it's like playing against him sometimes. He's the only worry Celtic should have, I think. It shouldn't be any Hearts players they're worrying about. It should just be their own goalkeeper. For Hearts, so I think Leon Boyce has been quite in good goal scoring form. I think he got 3 goals, and Gary Mackay-Stevens apparently improved. Finlay Pollock, the young lad, if he gets a chance, he's been really impressive. So a lot of positives for Hearts, and I think Celtic will need to be right up for this. I think it's 2 or 3 weeks away, so they've got some time to prepare. But this could be a big win for Hearts if it happens.
Yeah, these are the games that are set to take place on the weekend of August 14th, 15th, which would mean that for a lot of clubs, this would be the first opportunity they have to have a full stadium if, as planned, most coronavirus restrictions are lifted on the 9th of August. Obviously, we'll have to wait and see on that one, but a lot of people will be sort of earmarking that as the first time that they could go into a full stadium. And that might be a daunting prospect, because I imagine the Parkhead would be a pretty scary place to look in. I imagine those fans will be up for it. So if that is the first time that Hearts, if that's the first sort of visitors, then I'm sure that would be a tough prospect. Another game I'm really looking forward to, Cameron, and I'm sure you are as well, is the trip of Aberdeen to Raith Rovers. Because I know you covered Raith quite a lot last season for Energy Sport, and they impressed you throughout. And despite losing some of their key players, they've managed to get out the group. They're in the knockout stages. And do you think that they can cause Aberdeen some problems in the round of 16?
They can definitely cause some problems. Also, I have to see closer to time. I'd still put my money on Aberdeen because of how they've been playing. But Rafe, lost a lot of players. I've got them written here. Some just players they've lost, including loanees. They've lost Kieran McDonald, Daniel Armstrong, Regan Hendry, Manny Duku, Kai Kennedy, and that's just 5 out of, I think, about 7 or 8 that have left, first team players. Also, you know yourself how much I like Kieran McDonald. I thought he was excellent. I was telling you that Kelly should be getting him. I think Kai Kennedy and Regan Hendry were revelations last season. But I still think Aberdeen have enough about them. It's like going by the game against Hacken, the 5-1 victory, they looked pretty convincing. They looked really confident under Stephen Glass. That's what I took away from that game. So it'll be a tough trip. Rafe are at home, like you're saying. Obviously, could all change when fans come back if they do. But Aberdeen should have enough. I'd love to see Rafe have a go here. I liked Rafe last season. If John McGlynn, a manager that I really like, if he can keep them going under a massive rebuild, possibly the biggest rebuild in the SPFL alongside Celtic, then that'd be a massive feat.
I'm interested to get your thoughts on Aberdeen actually heading into the season, because it wasn't a great season at all last year, and even when Stephen Glass came in, they just looked sort of disorganised. It looked like players who weren't ready to play the type of football that Stephen Glass wanted to play, but they were still sort of giving it a go, and not to much success. So, and I'm maybe a bit sceptical of people reading too much into this Conference League result. Do you think that's the case, or do you think that, like you said, that confidence that they seem to be playing with in Europe can translate to a positive domestic season?
Yeah, it was more the confidence I took away, not quite the ability, because I don't think the opposition were up to much. They had a nice goal that they did score, to be fair to them, but they really weren't the greatest of opponents. I expected a lot better from a half-decent Swedish team, a league that we would put on par with almost the Belgians, as we were discussing earlier. But it was more the confidence. I think Lewis Ferguson's goal, his second, the absolute pile driver from a distance, I think that really showcased that they just looked like they were in control. It was like they always knew they were going to win. I think maybe 5-1 flattered them a little bit, but it was still an excellent result. And I think carrying that into your domestic season, they can go away to Sweden now knowing that they're basically through, 1 foot into the next round, and they can start preparing for upcoming games, and they'll have one eye on Rafe as well, because they know that it won't be a walkover, but Stephen Glass will want silverware, and a League Cup is an amazing opportunity to do that, something that Derek McInnes failed with quite a lot against the Old Firm and the Edinburgh side. So yeah, really exciting for Aberdeen. This is a competition they want to win, and with a bit of confidence, if they keep that up, they should be seeing off Rafe in the next round.
I have to say thank you to Russell Boyce from Axom, saying he's enjoying the show and this is a great start to the new series. We very much appreciate that. Please keep the comments coming in. We'd love to hear from you. And we're speaking about Rafe there, Cameron. There's 4 other championship sides remaining. It's a very strong showing from second tier sides. Group E winners Ayr host Dundee United. Peter Grant's Pars go to Ibrox. Kilmarnock travel to Hibs and Arbroath welcome holders St Johnstone to Gayfield. Which championship side do you think has the best chance of progressing to the quarterfinals? And I do have to chuck a disclaimer in there that when I was doing that, I did originally have 3 other championship sides remain because I forgot my team are now a championship side.
When you said that, I was like, Kilmarnock? Oh yeah, Kilmarnock. Yeah, of course.
I just saw that list and I was like,
totally
counting championship teams, and I was like, oh wait, that's actually us. I'm still in denial about it, however many months on.
Yeah, it is. It's hard to remember. Actually, going through and the best team there is 2 totally different things. I think for me, I know you'll have a lot more to say about Kilmarnock. I quite like the Dunfermline team. I think we're going to talk about a player they might be signing later on if we have time. But they've got some good forwards. Some players that really have went under the radar. So Kevin O'Hara's signed from Alloa. And they've also got 2 players that have been underwhelming, in Nikolai Todorov and Craig Whiten, both former Hearts players actually. 2 players that I've not liked at Hearts at all, not enjoyed when they've went away.
I think they've shown glimpses of talent, both of them, haven't they? Todorov
that's
and
what I'm
Cali.
saying. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, especially in this group stage, both of them, as well as Kevin O'Hara, have been really impressive. And I was shocked by that. I have to admit, when I saw these signings, I was like, that's not that exciting. And now they've also gotten Kai Kennedy on loan, which is an outstanding signing. Didn't talk about him enough when we were talking about Rafe Rovers there, but he was outstanding for them last season on the left wing. And yeah, really exciting forward line. I don't know too much about their defence. They have 2 experienced goalkeepers in Dennis Mamet and Owen Fon Williams, but don't know too much about their midfielder defence. But that front line, really good. I think, though, probably it's tough ties for all of them. Dunfermline, Rangers, Kilmarnock, Hibs, Aberdeen, Rafe, and Arbroath have the defending champions in St Johnstone. It's hard to make a case for any of them going through, but I'd maybe say Rafe Rovers, just because Aberdeen are still... I still fancy Aberdeen to win, but most likely to is Rafe Rovers, I reckon. What about yourself? What do you think?
Pains me to do it, but I think of those games, Ayr might have the best chance of getting through, because I'm not sure about Dundee United. I mean, they won all 4 of their games.
True.
But I'm just not sure if they... I mean, there are unknown quantity this season. Jack Donnelly coming into the comments there. Ayr through on a dodgy 1-0. Easy days. You save your chat for tomorrow's show.
Do you want me to just pipe him down? I forgot about Ayr United. I did forget. They were at the bottom of my list, so sorry, Jack. Maybe, yeah, sure, that's a great shout. I'll let you elaborate, but I'll make that.
Just because I just think Dundee United are like an unknown quantity this season. I mean, I don't know, is Lawrence Shankland still going to be there, and is Lawrence Shankland going to play better than he did last season? Because there was sort of only glimpses of him being the lethal striker we'd seen in the Championship. And I mean, can these young players really sort of impose themselves? What type of manager is Tam Court's going to be? Is he going to be? I mean, because there's so much scepticism around him, and I don't like it. I think there's a lot of sneering towards him just because he isn't a big name. I would like to see him do well, but it's very hard to know. I mean, when it's your first job in sort of top level management, then you're going to have question marks. There's no certainty in it, and that's just the way it is. Arbroath could maybe pull something off against St Johnstone, by the way. Because Arbroath are one of those teams who just, they're horrible to play against, aren't they?
Well, like you said, I was at Rafe a lot last season, and I watched Rafe face Arbroath at Starks Park, and Arbroath was just... It's one of the most horrible but amazing games I've ever seen. They deserved nothing. I think it was a draw they took away, but they deserved nothing. And yet Dick Campbell's men they somehow do it. And if they defeat the defending champions, the holders, in the second round, it's going to be one of the best League Cup results in the modern era, surely. And
I mean, it was a great result for Arbroath to get through. They were 2-0 down to Kelty Hearts and managed to claw their way back into that game and get something from it, as they do. Are you giving Kelly a chance at Easter Road?
I don't know. I don't know. I think Hibs, if they keep their squad together, as it seems like they are going to, I think Kelly, they were... I know their only loss off the group stage was to East Kilbride because of a forfeit, but it was narrow wins over Stranraer and Clyde, wasn't it? And was it, who did you draw against again? I forgot who you drew against.
We drew with Morton, but one on first penalty shootout since 1984.
You'll love that stat, man. I would love it as well, to be fair, if I was a Kilmarnock
fan. I didn't love it at all. I didn't love watching Killy lose penalty shootouts for the entirety of my life.
But hey,
pretty heart-wrenching.
Did you see them beating Morton on penalties? Did you like that?
I mean, I was there in the press box for Energy Sport, and I wasn't really doing my best at being a neutral reporter at that point, because I've seen us lose so many penalty shootouts, so I knew how much it meant for us to finally win one. So, and saving 3 penalties out of the 6 is pretty impressive from Zach Hevin. I think that the final one was a great save. But Tommy Wright seems upbeat off the back of the League Cup group stage, saying that sort of we won every game in his mind, because of course they did beat East Kilbride, but because somebody at Kelly can't check the SFA website, they played Dan Armstrong. I've got him off the bench, and so he had to forfeit that game, considering he was suspended from last season when he played for Raith Rovers. But yeah, I mean, I think Kelly have for a long time now been bad at breaking teams down. Since Steve Clark came in, teams went, oh, Kelly are actually a wee bit decent now, so we're going to have to sit in against them. And that's when sort of Kelly were, I mean, I get laughed at for saying this, but Kelly were in a wee bit of a title race. I mean, they were at the top of the league in December in that season.
Yeah.
They were top of the league, and then Celtic beat us 5-1 at Parkhead, but they were still top of the league. and that's when teams started sitting in. That's when everything just sort of tailed off. And then whenever that happened in the last few seasons, Kelly just don't have the sort of attacking game plan. And I think that a lot of teams are going to do that to Kilmarnock, considering they're sort of a big name. They have the biggest budget in the division. They will be the bookies' favourites to go up. So I think that a lot of teams will, if they get a first goal against Kelly, that's it. They'll be shutting up shop. And Kelly struggled with that against Morton and got a very late winner through youngster Kyle Connell. And when you're talking about Dunfermline, I think I would put them as Kelly's biggest challengers in the Championship this season. I've been impressed with their business. question marks over the manager because Peter Grant underwhelmed a lot of Pars fans. But I wouldn't write them off. It's the game they have, isn't it? It's having to go to Ibrox and the great record that they have there over the last season. Of course, only losing that one game on penalties to St Johnstone, who went on to win the Scottish Cup. So, yeah, I mean, if Pars had got pretty much any other team outside of Glasgow, I would have maybe been tipping them, but Rangers away. It's going to be pretty hard. Some comments coming in. Matthew Duff asking who is Mini Messi. We're talking about Ryan Gauld earlier and his move to Vancouver Whitecaps, and does that sort of fill him out of Scotland contention? We're hoping not. Daniel Mick there saying it's even worse than playing in the MLS. He plays for a Canadian team in the MLS. I guess that's pretty true. It's like playing for Cardiff or Swansea. So, I mean, I'm glad that hasn't happened in Scotland yet. I wouldn't be happy with seeing anyone break away down south. And there's a couple of all Premiership ties, Cameron, in the League Cup. We've got Dundee versus Motherwell and Livingston against St Mirren. St Mirren, of course, is a rematch from last season's League Cup semi-final. Do you think that'll spur the buddies on at all? Do you think they'll be out for revenge? Because, I mean, St Mirren's season last season was a story of almost. League Cup semi-final, Scottish Cup semi-final, missing out on a first ever top six finish on the last day of the season with an 89th minute equaliser from Hamilton Accies. Jim Goodwin will be determined to sort of at least improve on one of those and sort of make amends for falling short so closely last season.
Yeah, definitely. And they've looked strong as well, I thought. Really tricky group. Obviously, Dunfermline, one of those teams, we've been bigging them up. And Partick Thistle as well, definitely no walkovers. That's
getting Pars and Partick is tough, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, two really, really tough teams. But they've done well. I think they won all 12 points, if I'm not mistaken. I think they won 44. I could definitely... We're talking about fans coming back. Livingston, if they have a full stadium, it's not the most intimidating place on earth, so that shouldn't be a worry. St Mirren, definitely. I could see them taking this game 100%. Livy still look a little bit, I don't know, I think they were 1-0 up against Alloa with 10 minutes to go and lost 2-1. I think they just squeezed through the group in top spot. Or maybe even a second spot team, if I'm correct there. And they just had such a bad end to last season. I know a lot of people are still on the Martindale hype train from that amazing unbeaten streak, that historic sort of run, but they were bad towards the end of last season, really bad, relegation, Livingston sort of stuff. And St Mirren, in fact, if I was to put a banker on any of these games, I'd put St Mirren to beat Livingston.
Wow, it's a big shout. Wrong show. Cam, I think you covered Livingston more during their bad times, and I covered Livingston during that amazing run where I just thought they were never going to lose a game. I mean, I was convinced that side would just keep on winning. I thought I tipped them for Europe at one point. I was like, they're going to finish third. They're going to finish above Hibs and Aberdeen because they were so good.
That's a good point you make. The first game I went to was their first loss to St Johnstone. I think I put a curse on them.
Curse.
I was the curse. That's what it was. It's all downhill. It's all downhill. You have to go back. You go report on the game and we'll see European Livy. That's what we'll see.
And very quickly, Dundee versus Motherwell. I mean, Motherwell, a lot of noise about Motherwell after they lost the Lanarkshire derby to Airdrie, 2 great goals from the Diamonds in that one. Do you have a favourite in that game at Dens Park, or do you think it's one of those ones that's going to be very, very close?
I'm not going to say Motherwell are going to have a bad season or anything. Also, they had a pretty poor group stage. I think quite narrow wins, not convincing, and also lost the Lanarkshire derby to Airdrie, the first one in a long time. Really disappointing. I still think they'll bounce back this season. I think they'll have a pretty average season, maybe pushing for top 6. I don't think they have too many brilliant players, but I think this game I can see Dundee doing it. Just promotion bounce. We've got a few good players in. Really like Dundee actually this season. Really, I don't know if they're going to be a great side, but just an exciting, interesting team. A big mismatch of players. I think they might have a good start to the season and then tail away. That's my prediction for Dundee. And because of that, I think Dundee might win this game rather than Motherwell.
Interesting. I'm finding it hard to get past Dundee after their antics in the Scottish Cup and the Premiership playoffs last season. So I'm going to swiftly move on from that one, and we can swiftly move on from the League Cup in its entirety and get into one of the most exciting things about the summer period, and that's, of course, transfers. And I thought we could talk through some of the paper talk today and decide whether we think that moves are going to happen and how interested we would be to see them happen. Unfortunately, I don't, like, you know, the papers on the news. I don't have the papers to hold up and show you, Cameron. So you're just going to have to believe me, basically.
I'll imagine.
But let's start with Odds and Edward, which is going to be a transfer story that's going to rumble on until it's done, basically. The Daily Mail said today that Brighton are ready to up their bid to £20 million, but Crystal Palace are still very much interested in the Celtic striker. If you're Odds and Edward, which one of those sides are you more sort of interested in? Which move do you think is more appealing?
That's really tough.
If you were as talented as Odds and Edward,
I am as talented as Odds and Edward. You've not seen me at 5-a-side.
So.
If I just lost the weight, mate, if I didn't have that knee injury, you've got.
I could have gone pro.
Definitely. I don't know. That is a really tough question. That is really tough because I like both of those teams. I feel like both of them are kind of hated at times by a lot of people, but Brighton are an
hate each other,
team.
certainly, don't they?
They do hate each other for some weird, bizarre reason. I think it's a further away derby than Aberdeen and Inverness. It's a weird one. Both of them exciting teams. Like Palace, I've just signed Michael Elise from Reading, and that's just another brilliant forward to go alongside Wilfred Zaha should he stay. Everett Chiese when he's fit. Christian Benteke, who has found form in the game. I know he's become a bit of a meme in recent times, but he is still a good footballer. You can't take that away from him. And a new manager, very appealing. But you've got Brighton, who Graham Potter, exciting manager, quite simply cannot finish their chances. Like with Odds and Edward last season, Brighton could have been a top 10 team pushing in. Like, I know that sounds bizarre. It sounds ridiculous to say it because they were barely above relegation towards the end of the season, but they're a really interesting attacking team. I like the football they play. I don't know if I can give you an answer. Would you like to give me yours and I'll just copy you?
No. I think that I'm interested by the project that Graham Potter has at Brighton because I think that, I mean, they did get laughed at a lot last season. But like you said, and I mean, I'll be chucking it. This is our first mention at XG. I'm sure some people might turn off at that. But I mean, their XG had them so high in the Premier League throughout last season. I mean, they did just need, like you said, someone to finish their chances. And Odds and Edward definitely would have done that. I wouldn't have. I mean, Celtic fans would be glad that Odds and Edward wasn't that team last season, or where would they have been? 50 points off. I don't know. I think that the project is interesting at Brighton, but I'd say Crystal Palace are a bit of a bigger club. The atmosphere at Selhurst Park is great. There's the French connection with Patrick Vieira, who I'm sure Odds and Edward would have grown up watching and enjoying in those very successful national teams. So I'd say Palace is probably where I would pick. London, the atmosphere, and it's a fresh start. It's a complete fresh start. You know what you're getting at Brighton with Graham Potter, but I think that Vieira will be keen to sort of build something after Roy Hodgson left the club. Let's move on now to another one that we seem pretty certain that Edward will be leaving Celtic at some point this season. Oh, there's a comment coming in there that I will grab. Graham Caldwell said Edward would be a better fit at Brighton, in my opinion. They play some good football and he would be a good link player with the midfielders Brighton have. He is still a good finisher on his day. I would definitely agree with that. I think that I said this on the series finale of the Football Insomniac on Friday, that I think Morelos could move into one of those teams in the sort of bottom half of the Premier League who are a bit more scrappy. He would still get goals. But I think that Edward needs to play in a side that plays good football to get the best out of him. I mean, you saw the way that he can link up. That's what made me sort of enjoy Edward so much in the Premiership, is his link-up play, those deft touches round the corner, all those sorts of things that just sort of made him a class above your average top-flight Scottish footballer. And the sort of thing would be that will Palace do that? They haven't played good football for the past few seasons under Hodgson, but they might do so under Vieira, and that will be sort of the defining factor of whether Edward would be a success at Selhurst Park. Moving on to other transfer like we were talking about, Rotherham are very keen to sign Scottish Cup and League Cup match winner Sean Rooney. I mean, he's only played for half a season, but he is undoubtedly a club legend at McDiarmid Park, considering they scored those two goals just at almost the same time. I mean, I don't like the fact St Johnstone pushed that they were both the 31st minute. They win it, okay. I mean, it's rewriting history. I'm not a fan of it.
They do that a lot. Remember Xander Clark's winner? Remember that?
Oh, don't get me started on the Xander Clark goal.
Yeah.
that wasn't a goal. But yeah, Rotherham are very keen. They had a 200k bid rejected last month, and they want the deal done this week, or they'll walk away. Do you think, or I mean, this is a tough question because it's hard to put valuations on the sort of COVID market, but where are Saints looking and saying, yeah, we can let Sean Rooney go for this fee? 200k is not it. We can both agree on that. That's why it was rejected. But is there a sort of point? Are you holding it for 7 figures for Sean Rooney, or do you think you can allow yourself to fall beneath that?
Yeah, I don't know if you'd hold it for 7 figures, especially for a team that's just been relegated to League One. I don't think that'll happen. The manager's already said he's got other targets that he's willing to go for if this move doesn't happen. So I don't think they'll be going for that. Maybe they won't care if he doesn't go for that. They'll happily keep him. But maybe if they can double the fee, maybe make it $500,000, maybe that's what they'll be for sure. I think that... I don't want to say that's a good deal for St Johnstone because it's not, but it's certainly not an awful deal. I think it'd be a shame if he goes, to be quite honest. Rotherham, just because they're boring. I mean, Rotherham, like League One Rotherham, like it's boring, and at least go like a Championship team that might make the Prem or whatever. I'm not saying he's a Premiership footballer, but yeah, it's a boring deal. I hope it doesn't happen. I'd quite like to see him more next season in the Scottish Premiership.
Yeah, and I mean, Sean Rooney was fantastic when he got into that side. There's absolutely no denying it. But, I mean, it was just the second half of the season because Danny McNamara, who was on loan from Millwall, was so good in that right wing-back role. And it was kind of like when he left, it was what's going to happen here. And Sean Rooney did that exceptionally and, of course, scored those 2 goals that will mean that he's forever in St Johnstone folklore. But I'd like to see him stay in the Premiership. And, I mean... if he has a better season than Stephen O'Donnell, I mean, I expect Nathan Patterson to be Scotland's starting right back going forward. If he can get game time, that's the most important thing for him. How does it happen with James Tavernier, who, of course, has been exceptional these past couple of seasons? How does Nathan Patterson get minutes? So if Sean Rooney can get a run, he could be in the conversation for Scotland caps, and I don't know if that's the case, even if he's having a decent time at Rotherham. It's kind of linking to our original topic with Ryan Gauld. I'm not saying that Scotland should be the top of any Scottish footballer's priority, but if it is something in the back of your mind, I would say Perth is the place to stay for him. And another one, that story was from the Courier. This one's also from the Courier, who do a great job of covering Fife and Perth and Dundee sides. They do a really, really great job of it, and they've sort of gone in depth on those sides in the past few seasons. It's an exclusive from them that Graham Dorrans could be heading to East End Park. Is that the profile of player that Pars should be looking at if, with their German investment and with the past few seasons? I mean, I've seen some tweets joking about it. I feel like it's kind of round about this time every season where Pars make a couple of signings where you go, this could be their season, and then it never works out. So is Dorrans the one to finally take that step up and mean that they can get back to the Premiership? Where a club of Dunfermline's size, you'd expect them to be sort of not wallowing in the second division for quite so long.
Yeah, definitely not. It is an interesting one. We've already talked about some of their front line, and also Kai Kennedy joining on loan. So Graham Dorrans would be a brilliant leader in that team. He'd be a brilliant, just a man in the middle that can dictate the play excellently. He's shown he can do it in the Premier League, of all leagues in the world to do it. He's done it there. Yeah, it's an interesting one. You don't want to start just picking off ancient players. I think he's maybe 34 now. Maybe ancient's harsh, but he's been about a while. He's definitely a veteran. But Dundee did that last year with a big bunch of veterans. They've done it with quite a few of them. It's not the worst thing to have. It's not all about pace and such. If you get players like that in, it's a massive boost. I think he's an excellent player. I don't know what your thoughts are. I think he's a good player at that level at least, and it would be a good addition for the right money for a promotion push for Dunfermline. What do you think?
Yeah, he was linked to Kilmarnock before he signed for Dundee last season, and I was quite excited about it. I thought that I've been concerned about the age profile of players at Killie for a long time. That rightfully so, considering how they performed last season and the massive clear out that has had to happen subsequently. But I thought that Graham Dorrans was a player who, despite not sort of reaching the heights that he would have wanted to at Rangers, he still had that sort of pedigree from Premier League experience that he thought he could sort of make a mark, especially at Dens Park in the Championship. Didn't really prove the case. I think that other players sort of started ahead of him, and he does struggle with injuries. That was reportedly part of the reason he didn't want to make it to Rugby Park because of the artificial surface. So I think it's all about fitness, isn't it? Because if Graham, I don't know much about the Graham Dorrans character, but he's never struck me as somebody who would be massively vocal or who would really take charge of a dressing room. So there's
more a good presence
much
almost. Yeah.
And they do need sort of leadership. I mean, the captain, Ewan Murray, you were talking about not being sure about the defence. The captain, Ewan Murray, of course, is joining Kelly. So they sort of do have that hole there that needs filled. But it's these sort of few signings and how they can all gel that will sort of determine whether Pars will be title contenders, really. And so it'll be interesting to see if Pars can do that, and if Graham Dorrans does make the difference, because it'll be one to keep an eye on the championship. Certainly, let's have a wee tangent discussion that's going on in the chat. You dictate the conversation. That's what you guys are here for. We're very keen on it. And Terence Pat asking you, Cameron, are you for or against Saturday night football in the SPFL?
Well, it depends. I'm assuming that just means one game at night, right? Not every game moving
so
from 3
regularly o'clock? Saturday night football being a thing, and I mean, he asked the SPFL, but we'll talk sort of specifically about the Scottish Premiership.
Yeah, no, I would be interested in that. I'd certainly like it more if they were to take away another time slot. Let's say they took away the Sunday afternoon game and moved that to a Saturday night. I would much prefer that. I think that'd be a brilliant idea. I think you can make a proper day of it, can't you? A lot of people make a day out of football at 3 o'clock kickoffs and the like. Don't feel you can really do that on a Sunday. So if that was an alternative just to start with, that would be excellent. If this was just to be implemented randomly, I love that idea. Yeah, I've never thought about it really myself before, but I think that's really interesting. What about you? Would you back that?
Well, it's coming off the back of Hearts versus Celtic being at 8 o'clock on Saturday night, this upcoming weekend, which, I mean, if stadiums were full with Hearts versus Celtic at Tynecastle being 8 o'clock kickoff, I'm not too sure. I'm maybe a bit sceptical of that, but
I think it could
on
be,
a Saturday night would no. I'm saying it's great. I mean, if I was a Hearts fan or a Celtic fan, I would love that. I mean, travel home for Celtic might not be ideal, but Celtic fans are scattered all over the place. So I'm sure for some people that would be absolutely fine. But I mean, as a Hearts fan, going into a Saturday night 8 o'clock game, and if it was normal times, I mean, that'd be brilliant, wouldn't it? You're go for a drink all day, you obviously sensibly, and then you go to the game, you watch an enjoyable game of football, and then you head out to continue your night later on. So as a fan, I think it's great. I guess you need to sort of, I wouldn't want it to be any particular club would be in that Saturday night slot too often, because I mean, it's not often I feel for Celtic or Rangers fans, but those games often get moved to sort of strange times on a Sunday or Saturday or whatever. And I don't know if I'd personally enjoy that. And I, on the other side, I quite like it when a Kelly game is moved to a different time, because it probably gives me more chance of going. It probably gives me more chance of sort of making a different day of it or whatever, or meaning that I can have a Saturday to do whatever. So I think that's, if it was spaced out fairly and also distance-wise, he didn't have these massive sort of, as long as Ross County, I mean, the biggest journey would be, actually I was going to say Ross County to Kelly, but I forget Kelly aren't in the Premiership anymore, so I don't know who's the furthest south anymore. But I mean, if County are having to travel all the way down to Edinburgh or whatever and then get back at 10 o'clock at night, that's just not going to work, is it? So like Daniel Mack's saying, it's not very good for families or pensioners. There's a flip side to everything. As a sort of a fans our age, I'm sure it's a very exciting thing. I think this is just a one-off just now, Tim's Pat asking there. I think that it's what Sky Sports tend to do is they jam-pack August before the Premier League starts with lots of Scottish football. They did it last season, and then they didn't fill their quota towards the end. So there's 3 Premiership games on the telly this weekend. I think Rangers, Livingston, Hearts, Celtic, and Motherwell Hibs are all on the telly. I don't think there'll be 3 games every weekend, so I don't think they'll need to make use of that 8 o'clock slot. We're rapidly approaching 7 o'clock, Cameron, so I guess all that's left to do is say thank you to everyone for joining us on our debut episode. We're massively excited about this project, and we hope you'll join us every night for your fix of Scottish football chat. We'd love it if you join us at 6 or 7 every night, but it's also available on demand on the State of Mind YouTube, which you should subscribe to get in those monthly prize draws and win some great prizes. The state of Scottish football is back tomorrow with Jack Donnelly and Struan Garvey. Same time, same place, 6 p.m. here on A State of Mind. So I'll say thank you very much to you, Cameron, for joining me. Thanks again to everyone for watching, and we'll see you again very, very soon.